Cap, cravat, tweed jacket. Where else could we be but the Goodwood Revival?
The Goodwood Revival has become for many the highlight of the historic racing season. It's become so much more than just a race meeting. It's really a 3-day celebration of vintage style and culture. Period dress is encouraged, and it really is an immersive experience as the heyday of the circuit from 1948 to 66 is celebrated. The first revival was held in 1998, and I remember watching from the grandstands as this car, ERA Remus, won that very first race. It was the Goodwood Trophy, and it was being driven by Ludovic Lindsay, and it's entered here again in the Goodwood Trophy. Two beautiful Maserati 6CMs, I think they are. Obviously a Ferrari GT short wheelbase, and 246 Dino, I think that is next to it. And Julian Bronson's Scarab, a wonderful looking front engine car, 1960s. So when this car appeared, sadly it was already dated because the rear engine revolution of Cooper had already happened. That was the way to go. But Lance Reventlow had poured his money, he was the heir to the Woolworths fortune, into this project, the Scarab project, and he built some beautiful cars. The sports cars are wonderful, but sadly they were dated before they even started, really. Cooper Monaco here with the 2-litre Climax engine. On Friday it was mostly practice and the weather held. We were graced with two beautiful rainbows over the circuit. But at about 6:30 in the evening there was the first proper race, and that was the Freddie Marsh Memorial Trophy, which was in the spirit of the Goodwood 9 Hours race, which was held, I think, between 52 and 55. These were the races that went into the night. As you can see on the grid, are just a wonderful collection of 50s sports cars. Fraser Nash there, Le Mans rep, in my personal opinion, one of the greatest sports cars ever made. Ferrari going through. An interesting car up at the front here. This is a Cooper Jaguar Mark 1. Quite an odd-looking car because the driver is way out on the side of the cockpit, really overhanging the edge. Number 3 there is the little rear-engine bobtail Cooper. That only has a 1500cc Coventry Climax engine in it, but it's so light and nimble that it can really fight with the bigger engine cars. Austin Healey 100S, it's the greatest incarnation of the Austin Healey 100 all-alloy-bodied S because it did so well at Sebring in period. Driven here by Jack Rawls, son of the Austin Healey specialist Bill Rawls, and he drove it so well and was really a joy to watch. As you can see, the sun has gone down and there's this beautiful autumnal light creating a wonderful atmosphere. Sam Hancock brought in Fred Wakeman's C-Type in first, but so many cars of note. A particular one is this Aston Martin, probably one of the most famous Aston Martins of all time, 6.2 EMU. That came in second in the 1958 Le Mans race, driven by the Whitehead brothers, and it's still a highly original car. Here's Parc Fermé. Again, a lovely touch that Goodwood does. The cars gather after the race and you can stand and watch the drivers discuss how their various races went. The evening creates a wonderful atmosphere in the paddock. These two Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase cars looking absolutely striking. The silver one is a 1961 model, the dark green a 1960 model, and of course the rather unusual 246 Dino, which is usually driven by Sam Hancock. Saturday was bright and sunny, and we started off by watching the Ferrari demonstration. It was 75 years of Ferrari. And this is quite special. That's Art Maserio, the Italian GP racer, in a Ferrari 156. It's a perfect creation of the 1961 Phil Hill car that won the World Championship. There are no original cars left. That is a complete recreation. And of course the Rob Walker liveried Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase. That's the famous car that Stirling Moss drove in period, and the story goes that he switched on the radio and listened to Raymond Baxter's commentary of the TT race that he was winning, and by listening to the commentary on the radio he heard who was behind him and how the race was unfolding. There's the 250 LM. That, I think, won the 12 Hours of Reims, and being demoed by the purveyor of fine historic cars, Simon Kidston, there in the cockpit. The cars are gathered on the grid, and it's such a splendid sight. And again, with the period-correct buildings, it's just so evocative of the 50s and 60s. Here we see in slow-mo a very important car. This car is the actual car that won the 1951 British GP by Gonzalez, and it was the first win for Ferrari. Then it was on to the St Mary's Trophy Part 1, which was for touring cars, which raced in period between 1960 and 1966. On pole was Romain Dumas in Bill Shepherd's 7-litre Ford Galaxy. It looks like the Galaxy was quite slow away there. Andrew Jordan in the Lotus Cortina behind looked like he got the better of him. But Dumas seems to have got back in front and pulling away with that mighty 7-litre engine. There go the Minis, led by Alex Brundle, having their own dice. Marcel Fassler, unfortunately, had to retire that lovely 127, the Alfa Romeo GTA. He used to drive for Audi and actually won the Le Mans 24 Hours 3 times and the World Endurance Championship. He was quickly trying to get the car back into the paddock before the rest of the grid came round. Luckily, the marshals came to help. There goes another one of the big American touring cars. Jeremy Hackett there of tailoring fame. That often happens at Goodwood, actually. You do a double take because you've seen somebody you recognise from a different walk of life, a minor celebrity. There's Dumas bringing the car in. He took the win. And there is the unpainted Alfa GTA of Frank Stippler. He's a touring car ace, and he really knows how to handle historic cars. I've seen him race pre-war Voiturettes in the wet, and he was rather spectacular.
In a different pair of hands as the cars go back to other drivers, it's going to be John Cooper who drives that car in the race.
Stippler coming over and congratulating him.
And there was some congratulations going on there. Roman Tima and Frank Stippler having a bit of a chat and a pat on the back after they...
And another chance to look in the paddock, and a lovely 50s sports car, the Tejero Jaguar. That has a 3.8 Jag engine in it, a 1957 car. And here, Tony Smith's Ferrari Dino, the last of the front-engined Grand Prix cars. Phil Hill drove one of these, not this actual one, because I think these are recreations, and so rare to see even one of these, but here you have two. And here's Julian Majube's Alfa 308. Really is quite a large car and was created by Alfa to compete with the German Mercedes and Auto Unions. There's Julian himself standing and chatting. And this is the E-Type ERA of Duncan Ricketts. Such a talented engineer as well as driver. He's worked so hard to get this car going, reliable, and in race-winning trim. And doesn't it look wonderful? And this is a car very close to my heart. It's ERA R7B. It used to belong to my great uncle Dudley Gagan. When he had it, it was in red, and I remember touring Europe with him, going to various historic racing events. It was very much part of our family. It's now looking splendid in its original white colour with the nickel radiator. Was driven in period by Arthur Dobson and was at Donington against the Auto Unions in the late 30s. Then it was the Goodwood Trophy itself, which was a 20-minute race for Grand Prix and Voiturette cars of a type that raced between 1930 and 1951. So quite a span there. On pole was David Morris with the ERA R11B, and next to him was Ian Baxter in the Alta 1937 car, which was really impressive, only 2 litres. And there is the BRM V16 making that unmistakable noise. Unfortunately, just before the race was started, there were yellow flags as Patrick Blakeney-Edwards, who is in the middle of the row in front of us, in the red Maserati 8CM, seemed to have stalled his engine. The majority of these cars are running a pre-selected gearbox, and it's never a good idea to just keep them on the line revving their engines, and obviously temperatures would be rising, and there'll be a lot of drivers feeling very concerned because they'll be pleading for the starter to drop the flag. But the decision was taken to push Patrick Blakeney-Edwards off to the side of the circuit and start the race. What an absolutely glorious sound that BRM V16 makes. Unfortunately, it was Julian Majube's Alfa 308 that wasn't able to start. That probably overheated, or the plugs oiled up, or the gearbox gave up because it was standing on the line too long. Also, the beautiful Largo Talbot T26, that failed to start, which was really unfortunate because we rarely see these cars elsewhere, and on the Goodwood circuit, they really can stretch their legs. Patrick Blakeney-Edwards was fortunate enough to be able to start his Maserati and leave the pit lane before the others came round. That is just something very special, listening to that BRM go past, driven by Rob Hall. There it goes again. I think that's not sounding as if it's going as well as it should be, and followed by R7B that we saw earlier on. You can actually hear that high-pitched wail of the supercharger, which is so characteristic of the ERAs.
That's good. So can you get another place from pit lane after the... You would have had to have left pit lane after the...
There goes the Alta. They were meant to have a reputation for being unreliable, but that is certainly going quickly. And the Alvis Goodwin Special, which is a slight oddity, but sounding strong. And the lovely Alfa Monza, one of the older cars on the grid. We saw that at Silverstone at the Classic. And Mark Gillies is there up front. I think he's taking the checkered flag.
Mark Gillies, I think he just helped.
And Mark Gillies bringing the ERA up to the line to be presented with his cigar, and David Morris in R11B. And there is Ian Baxter in that Alta. That is fantastic to see that up at the front. I have to say, we had quite a good position here, right next to the start line.
Yeah, it's a bit of a struggle. You've got to pick your spot, because with no dampers, we had a certain line that we've got to stick to, and it makes for an interesting ride.
Between races, we managed to make it over the road, where there are numerous stalls, and I always make a point of dropping in on the Jim Stokes workshop stand. They had this gorgeous Alfetta 158 on display. It's made from original parts. The Alfetta debuted in 1938, but was still racing in 1951 in the hands of Fangio. It's only a 1.5 litre supercharged engine. In 38, it was producing about 225 bhp. But then by 1951, it was producing 425 with massive fuel consumption. But an absolutely gorgeous thing. Also on display was this Connaught B-Type, made famous, of course, by Tony Brooks, winning the Syracuse Grand Prix in 1955. Then it was the Whitsun Trophy, which is a 25-minute race for unlimited sports cars that raced up to 1966. And you can see there it's a collection of GT40s, Lola T70 Spiders. On pole was Ollie Bryant with his Lola Chevrolet T70 Spider. The marshals noticed that there was fluid dropping out of the back of Stuart Hall's engine, and that was causing some concern. You've only got about 2 minutes to sort anything out, which is a problem, because that's when the cars come back onto the grid, and the starter, of course, wants to release them as quick as possible. So there they are pouring on the cement dust to try and sort that problem out. Of course, if it's fuel, that is quite a hazard. And Ollie Bryant on the far side there, coming up to the start line. And that's Rob Hall next to him. These cars are about sort of 6 litres, so that's a lot of horsepower. Noise and tyre smoke, that is what that grid is all about. And Rob Hall and Ollie Bryant had a real tight race back at the members' meeting earlier in the year. And Ollie Bryant did an amazing move on the last lap to win. So I think he was quite determined to win this one, and he's out front. We've got GT40s there, sort of in the middle of the pack. You usually see those out front, but they seem to be down there in the middle. I think that's Gordon Shedden there in Philip Walker's GT40. Yellow flags, so a safety car was brought out in this race, which bunched up the grid again, but Ollie Bryant still taking control at the front. And Ollie takes the checkered flag. There was an interesting opportunity in the paddock, and that was to compare two Lancia D50s. I say Lancia D50s. One is actually a Ferrari D50 and one a Lancia D50. The Lancia D50 debuted in 1954. It has the V8 engine, and it was incredibly successful right from the start, with Ascari taking pole position in his first Grand Prix. But after Ascari died, the Lancia family sold their assets, the Lancia D50 being one of them, to Ferrari. And Ferrari developed the car. The car on the right is the older car, and you can see the pannier fuel tanks are separate to the body. Part of the development that Ferrari did on the other car is mould the fuel tanks into the body, making it perhaps more aerodynamic. Anyway, it was successful because in 1956, Fangio won the World Championship with the Ferrari developed D50. Here is another Cooper Jaguar. That's the rather beautiful curvaceous Mark II version. This is something very special, the long nose D-type. Look at the list of those drivers on the door. That's pretty impressive. This is the 1955 Le Mans winning car. Hawthorne actually took this car over the line after the tragic accident and won with this car. Period transporters are also a big thing in the Goodwood paddock, and this Foden is rather wonderful. It's actually been for sale for some time, and it has a 6-litre turbo diesel engine in it and is being modified, but a wonderful thing. Then it was the Stirling Moss Trophy, which was a 1-hour 2-driver race for close cockpit GT cars that raced before 1963. That is David Hart's Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase. On pole is the purple AC Dragon Snake Cobra of Mike Whitaker and Andrew Jordan. There were pit stops, of course, and you can see there, that's the Fiskin Jaguar E-Type that's leaving the pit lane. And that is Joe Twyman in that gorgeous 250 GT short wheelbase. He drove the wheels off that car, and there is the Dragon Snake Cobra in that wonderful purple. That came in first with Mike Whitaker and Andrew Jordan. And there's the second place Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase of David Hart and his son Olivier Hart. Looks wonderful in that dark green colour.
And in the end, our team crew father and son love their racing, and a good race to end this Saturday.
Here is the winning car, the Dragon Snake. Those cars were developed by Carroll Shelby as drag racing cars. There are only about 8 ever produced, and that's one's been adapted for circuit racing. There's always a theme at Goodwood, and at the main gate, the theme was the Roswell conspiracy of 1947, when there was belief that there was a government cover-up of aliens landing. There's also the best dressed competition, and for both men and women. And the Revive and Thrive area was very popular. It does seem that wherever you turn at Goodwood, there's something to photograph and something to watch. We were lucky enough to get access to the Richmond Lawn grandstand, which is just next to the chicane. And they had on show there this beautiful Porsche 356. My uncle has just restored his that he's had since he was in his early 20s. And this looked gorgeous. It was actually raced and rallied by Betty Haig of the Haig whiskey family. So then it was on to the TT, which is the big event of the meeting. It's a 1-hour race for 2 drivers for closed cockpit GTs and prototypes, pre-66 of course. And there's the lovely Sunbeam Lister Tiger that is a personal favourite of mine. And the Porsche 904 is such a pretty car. I think that must be one of the prettiest cars Porsche's ever produced. So it's no surprise, really, that Jenson Button in Adrian Newey's E-Type is out in front. In historic racing circles, that car's quite controversial. I think it's probably gone through the Red Bull Racing wind tunnel and is being developed within an inch of its life. And that is Niklaus Ditting in his E-Type, who's spun it coming out of the chicane and has got himself into trouble trying to turn that round and not having a tight enough turning circle. He's obviously in a very vulnerable position there, and the marshal's not quite sure what to do, of trying to avoid the cars coming out of the chicane. Now the safety cars come out, that's allowed the marshals to jump down. It looks like he's still got it in gear, and the marshals are finding it very hard to push. Even the simplest of things seem to be difficult when you know you've got thousands of people watching you. And Jenson seems to have taken control of the restart after the safety car. Now that's an interesting car. That is the Tajero Ford. I think there were two of those made, and one had a Buick engine in it. I actually sat in it once, and it was a very claustrophobic cockpit. A wonderful Sunbeam Lister Tiger kicking up the dust as it comes out of the chicane. Andrew Smith and Gordon Shedden in their AC Cobra took the win after the Adrian Newey E-Type, which Jensen was driving with Adrian's son Harrison Newey. That ended up breaking its gearbox soon after Harrison Newey took over, which was a bit of a shame. But it was another Cobra win for the TT. Before we left, we caught a glimpse of the Levant Cup, which was an all-MGB race. Ed Foster came home first, and it was a popular win. He was driving the MGB his father bought years ago for him and Ed to race before his father was sadly diagnosed with Parkinson's. So the win was a wonderful result. After the Levant Cup, we made our way back to the car park, and the Spitfires took to the skies, silhouetted by the setting sun. We were exhausted, but we'd had a fantastic 3 days. The Goodwood Revival really is an outstanding event and, in my mind, the best historic race meeting on the calendar.